Good afternoon. I'm checking to see if everyone can hear me.
Hi, Noya. We hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, I can
All
hear
right.
you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy International Women's Month and happy International Women's Day in advance. Okay. So my name is Noya, and we'll be kicking off this conversation right away. Just as a background, this webinar is being hosted by Global Rights with support from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, UK FCDO, who has been supporting our peace building projects in Nigeria, particularly the Northwest, since 2023. We kicked off the first phase in the early part of 2023 and started the second phase towards the end of later last year, 2024. As part of the work that we have been doing, specifically in Northwest Nigeria, we have been working to strengthen the role of women in peace building processes. And this conversation really is just to amplify the work that we're doing on a more global scale by extending the conversations to other parts of Africa. And we have different countries represented here today. We'll get to meet a lot of our panelists later. And of course, our moderator who will be moderating this conversation. But just as a background, there's a documentary that we'll be showing shortly. And that documentary really just tells the story of the work that Global Rights has been doing in the area of strengthening the role of women and other marginalized groups in peace processes in Northwest Nigeria, and as well as the successes, the impacts of the project, and also the work that needs to be done. So basically what this story tells is from the perspective of Nigeria, Northern Nigeria, and how that conversation can be applied and the context of the conversation in other countries that we are looking to collaborate with and engage down the line. So without further ado, I think we can just take a look at this journey of peace processes and the work that we have been doing in the states that we have been working in Northwest Nigeria. Thank you.
Sorry, Noya, could we start with introductions first?
Okay.
Correct.
All right then. So I would introduce myself, Noya. My name is Noya Sedi. I'm program officer at Global Rights, and I'll hand over to you, ma'am, to take over as the moderator, take over the rest of the introductions.
Thank you so much, Noya, and welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you here today. Noya, please could you just take over briefly? Noya, please let's start with the documentary. I'm truly sorry. Please start with the documentary.
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. I'm having some network issues here.
Northwest Nigeria, a land of enduring traditions, bound by history and resilience. Yet, beneath its rich heritage lies a painful reality: division and mistrust, fracturing families and displacing communities. Violence replaced dialogue, and the weight of inequality silenced too many voices. lack of communication platforms, the exclusion of key stakeholders, and the absence of accessible early warning systems left vulnerable communities exposed. As a result, banditry, kidnappings, farmer-herder clashes, and intercommunal violence continued to escalate. Global Rights, with support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, UK, launched an intervention to address these issues in northwest Nigeria. Through strategic relationships with influential stakeholders, the organization implemented community-driven initiatives through community dialogue committees, CDCs, early warning response coordination systems, and the Gender Action Learning Systems (GALS) programs in Sokoto, Katsina, Kano, and Kaduna states. Traditional rulers, religious leaders, law enforcement agencies, women, and youth came together to find common ground, discuss issues, and create solutions that reflect their aspirations.
At Global Rights, we have a not for us without us policy, which puts our partners at the driver's seat of any project. And it wasn't any different for this project. Going into the communities, designing the projects with them, designing the activities with them, letting them be at the driver's seat of choosing what direction the CDCs go, the interactions, and having them lead all of that was very essential for us.
On some of the strategies that we've engaged in the project, I would say have yielded the success we've seen so far. I think one key strategy is actually working with the community to identify the issues themselves, and then working with them to create solutions to these issues. And it's those solutions created that now inform our implementation strategies and our approach and models that we're using for the project. And I think that has greatly contributed to largely contributed to the success that we've seen on the project.
We have been seeing a lot of training, a lot of partner donor support, but we have never seen that one impactful like Global Rights. So you bring in people themselves, engage them to come up with their issues, and also you engage them to come up with a solution to their problem. This is very, very community-friendly approach. We need it. We want it to sustain so that we touch more lives of matured girls and the matured women that have been denied right to talk, right to speak, right to claim a right to participate into community, right to participate into domestic decision-making.
Conflict settings create an even more fertile ground for crimes of sexual and gender-based violence. The protracted crisis in northern Nigeria, the breakdown of formal and informal protection mechanisms, lack of security, displacement and migration, proliferation of insurgency groups, and poverty have undermined trust and cohesion in communities and exposed the most vulnerable, women, children, people with disabilities, and youths to exploitation and abuse.
What we realized in our early visits to the communities was that there were no structures for women engagements in that sense. In that even though women were the ones who were disproportionately affected by conflict and violence in the region and in the community, there were no specific platforms for that sort of dialogue where women could engage. And even where there was a semblance of those platforms, there were hardly any women participating or contributing directly in those discussions.
Women have no voice. They don't even listen to them.
One of those things I've observed in Sokoto is this widespread lack of capacity, lack of skills to handle issues, to understand those issues, and to see how within their own context and with the limited resources that they have, they can actually handle.
Before the training, is like men usually doesn't help their house and household chores. Even apart from that, even in decision making, or men usually used to get angry at their wives without even knowing the reason. That maybe if something happens, they don't bother to ask what happened. They will start shouting at the wife. It usually used to bring misperception in the household.
So before the Global Rights intervention, there were a lot of gaps in the community whereby you find out that GBV cases are happening and there's nobody to like help, there's nobody to respond, and a lot of us, we are actually ignorant of what to do actually.
Sokoto, located in a most conservative state with religious sensitivities. Male is a major decision maker in family and in community. Women have been denied every right to participate in the decision making, domestic decision making, as well as community decision making.
Well, this gender-based violence is abuse of women's rights. You see, the issues that I'm facing here, people maltreating, abusing women, abusing their children. See, you find somebody will just beat his wife, pack her property and throw away, or even injure her.
The center was open since 2019 and we have recorded 4,422 or 26 cases, male and female. And mostly women affected, 3,801 cases of women and young girls.
The toll was beyond measure. Women and girls suffered in silence, lives cut short, families torn apart, futures left in ruins. The absence of trust ran deeper than marriages and communities. It carved a divide between the people and those who want to protect them.
We have so many challenges. When we started intervening on GBV cases, the most challenges are domestic violence, especially between husband and wife, and rape cases.
When the project started, one of the critical challenges we face is one, illiteracy. A lot of the members of the community are not well aware of one, the function of some security agencies and institutions and agencies that are available that they can seek redress whenever they are faced with some of this violence. Two, we have challenges such as poverty. A lot of the survivors are actually propelled by the level of poverty because they are too poor to seek for legal redress to some of the threats they face.
In the darkest moments, hope often finds its strongest voice. Here is a story of how technology, dialogue, and women's empowerment are helping to build of peace in northwest Nigeria. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became a movement. They call this movement the Community Dialogue Committee, the CDC, a simple name for an ambitious dream, a platform where voices once silenced could now be heard.
First of all, there are entry points. If, for example, your target audience are the women and the young girls, you cannot just straight go to them, not just to the elders, but the critical stakeholders, the religious leaders, the traditional rulers. So these were the people we have to, speak to. We call them the gatekeepers, and they were able to give us access to the communities. And I think that was really very important. The second aspect of this navigation is that we didn't come as if we know it all. We had to rely on them because they speak the language, they understand the culture, they understand the complexities, the political and domestic experiences that they have within those types of environment.
We're very particular about ensuring that there was ownership or whatever it is that we're doing. So, for example, if the community dialogue committees were for the community members, by the community members, the leadership of the CVCs were by the community members. We selected from people who were of repute at the community level and ensured that they were the ones who made up the composition of the CDCs. The rules, the guidelines, the terms were all jointly made by those people at the community level.
The community dialogue committee, they're very active. In fact, when the team went to meet with NAPTIP recently, they were telling them that this committee is so active that they're really collaborating with them. They've been getting cases from them. So they're partnering a lot with them.
Through effective implementation of the girls' training, women, youth, and minority groups took their seat at the table, challenging traditional norms and reshaping the narrative of peace building.
The women now have voice. Their voice is being recognized, even at our palaces. Before, we don't have women representative in the palace. Now we have a representative of the women, that every woman, when they want to talk to us, They will liaise with her. They will talk to us. We will invite her in the palace. We will hear from her. We will also engage the husband to talk to him to resolve the dispute.
Global Rights, through the activities of CDC in Sokoto, was able to assist us to launch a program. We conducted series of trainings that involved school principals, guidance and counseling officers, and all other stakeholders in the schools, particularly the female schools in the state, on how best to actually sense the warning signals of gender-based violence, report the gender-based violence, and even prevent the occurrence of gender-based violence in schools.
More recently, in a conversation with the district head in Katsina State that we're working in currently, he mentioned how he has appointed a gender desk officer in his council. He's the second district head in the entire Katsina State to do that. So normally that's not something that happens. We don't see women come out and sit, in the council of traditional rulers. But now he has put a woman there, not just for tokenism, but also like to sit there on women issues and to interface directly with women.
Technology became a lifeline. Early warning systems connected communities to security agencies, preventing violence before it could erupt. The impact of global rights intervention is clear. 93.2% believe that women's inclusion in peace-building efforts and community decision-making processes has increased. 82.7% believe that there is undeniable acceptance of women's leadership participation in governance. 89.2% agree that there is now better trust and collaboration between communities and law enforcement agencies. 85.3% believe that there now exists greater communication and collaboration between religious groups. Beyond these, the true measure of success lies in the stories of transformation.
Kuma abin da ɗin CDC ɗin ya sanya yanzu har waɗanda ba addininsu ɗaya ba sun zo wuri ɗaya suna haɗa kansu wajen ƙoƙarin a zauna lafiya, ko kuma idan wata matsala babba ta taso za a yi iyakar bakin ƙoƙari a kwantar da ita, ko kuma wani abu na ci gaba in ya zo za a haɗa kai a zauna a tattauna a samu mafita baki ɗaya.
Now we have a particular community we have problem penetrating. I knew we have attempted 3 times. We wrote officially to see how it could be mobilized, people could be mobilized so that we get stakeholders in that community. We never had it. And lucky enough, the arrival of Global Rights through the Community Dialogue Committee invited us and said, Salama Center, please can you come and create awareness for us? And then we went in. Behold, Global Rights were there. They were the powerhouse there. They gave us very good entrance into that community. It was difficult. We have never had a community entry there. All effort proved abortive until their arrival. Now we go in 5 times already. It's a good one for us.
Before the project itself, there was really a dire need in Sokoto. People were lacking in motivation. People were a bit stranded. What should they do? How can they contribute? They cannot continue to rely on the government for everything. But then after the project, one of the things I saw, particularly the last conference that we had in Sokoto, the level of motivation that graduated into total commitment and the things that they have learned through this project, and their willingness to stand on their own even after the project is over. So the compelling story is the availability and also the access and the willingness of women to come out to speak, to give their own side of the story and be willing to become agents in this transformative journey that we have experienced. And it's something that we really shouldn't lose sight of. It's really key and it's important.
There are a lot of things that I don't even share with her. I don't even need her assistance or her advice. But after the girls' training, I normally share some things with her.
I want to appreciate Global Rights for this intervention. most especially in our communities. A lot of women and children have been abused, but without the awareness, they feel as if there's nothing they can do. But because we have created a lot of awareness today, there is peace in our community.
We had a very wonderful time to celebrate Christmas, and both faiths came together. CDC Gagi, we met together and we ate together, we spoke together. We had a very wonderful time to commemorate that very festive moment, which ordinarily wouldn't have been possible. It would have been seen as strange. It is only for Christians, that seclusion would have been there. But with what interfaith dialogue has garnered over the years, and especially with the CDC, it has really helped to bring us together, and we feasted together. We were on common front, and that really helped to foster our relationship.
So now I believe we sustain this good momentum. Now community is safe, the women are safe, the women has voice, their voice are recognized. Just last week, I was asked to invite 100 women at the community. So could you imagine 500 women participate? Before, it's very difficult for me to assemble 50 women a day. But I can look at this time around, I can assemble more than 500 women to engage them in some of the issue decision we want to take that touches them. Issue like health thinking behavior, issue like girl child education, empowering girl and adolescent girls to school, issue like elimination street hawking among our girls to combat their hours of hawking into school hours. So it's very now very okay. So the community is safe, women are safe now.
But just watching the transformation afterwards, seeing halfway how people learn to be willing to work together, seeing that they've also grown to be more equitable, that gender came to the fore, and that they were able to have meaningful conversations about gender, to see also how the transformation has brought women to the fore in this project, how women sit equally at the CDC and at conferences with the men, how the girls transformed households and how they are so eager to spread the lessons from the girls, how it's also transformed marriages at the individual level, at the meso level, at the micro level, how it's just transforming the state, and seeing the transformation going on. It's been really, really gratifying.
This is the story of Northwest Nigeria, a story of resilience, collaboration, and hope. It is a reminder that even in the face of adversity, bridges of peace can be built, not with steel and concrete, but with technology, dialogue, and unyielding courage. This is not the end of the story, it's just the beginning.
Every society on gender-based means a society that has a voice, a society where people could see something and say something, possibly do something.
A conflict-free Kano for me would be a place where there's peace, where women are free, women and girls are free to gain the skills, the access opportunities, and to be able to make their own choices without fear.
We should be able to relate and really be a support to one another. That's what I look forward to, a society where I can sleep comfortably. My neighbor is there, I can also stand in for my neighbor if he's not there, and we can be able to stand in for each other.
A home of peace and a home to live in, and a home that I will never migrate to another place because I enjoy the environment whereby I'm living at, and it means that everybody there will be hope. It brings back hope to me.
A peaceful, conflict-free society is a society in which trust has been built, that there's a tangible asset of trust as part of their social capital. It's a society in which everyone feels safe in spite of their identity, whether that identity is gender or religion, whether it is ethnicity, that everyone feels safe, everyone feels seen, and everyone feels heard and accepted.
Okay, welcome back. So like I said earlier, the documentary was really just a storytelling session where we showed the work that we have done so far in Northwest Nigeria. And that is basically the aim of this conversation. While we would like to spotlight what the context of inclusion and peace building looks like in other countries, we also want to have this platform to celebrate the work that is already being done in the respective countries represented here and Africa as a whole, and also explore ways that we can, you know, highlight and spotlight and amplify the voices of women who may not have the same opportunities or the platforms that we have to be heard. So without further ado, we'll get right into the introductions. Like I said earlier, my name is Noya Segi. I'm program officer here at Global Rights. And joining us in this conversation are our speakers. The profiles I would be introducing them with, obviously, it's just a tip of the iceberg compared to the work that they have already done in their respective countries and in the continent. But this is just a way of highlighting some of the work that they have done and the passions that they share with regards to this cause. So here we have Barrister Rebecca Sako-John, who is the Permanent Commissioner, Kaduna State Peace Commission. Kaduna State is a state in Northwest Nigeria. She's from Nigeria, and this commission has been established to prevent, mitigate, and resolve conflicts and promote peaceful and harmonious coexistence. And Barrister Rebecca, through her office, has ensured that Kaduna State has worked towards ensuring a peaceful society and also putting women at the fore of these efforts in terms of early warning, in terms of community response and building resilience to violence, extremism. She has a master's degree in international human rights. So thank you very much, Barrister Rebecca, for joining us. We also have Bassi, who also wears many hats, but she's the associate for Africa Peacebuilding Program at the Global Network of Women Peace Builders. She's a peace educator and multilingual translator, interpreter. She's dedicated to supporting vulnerable groups, women and children. Her work includes trauma healing, livelihood support, and skills training to help them reintegrate into their community. So thank you very much, Bassi, for being here. We also have Bassi is from Nigeria. Sorry, I forgot to say that. We also have Melissa Drisi here. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Please correct me anywhere I'm wrong. Still getting in tune with names. Melissa is the program assistant at WACSI, which is the West African Civil Society Institute. She's Cameroonian, and she's a civil society and peace building expert and has extensive experience in capacity development, governance, and youth engagement. She has worked towards ensuring the inclusion of marginalized or otherwise overlooked groups in peace building efforts and plays a role in policy advocacy, youth rehabilitation. She successfully influenced national policies and rehabilitated over 300 young violent offenders. So thank you very much, Melissa, for joining us here. We also have Ms. Musu Kamara, who's from Liberia and is a regional youth engagement officer at Plan International West and Central Africa Hub. She's a feminist, a humanist, and also works as an environmentalist. She has a proven track record of working with international and non-profit organizations, particularly in areas of youth and gender mainstreaming. Her work is dedicated to social justice, gender equality, and environmental sustainability. Joining us again, thank you very much, Ms. Musu, for being here. We have here Ms. Mercy Chepngeno, again, I hope I got that correctly, who is from Kenya and is the Protection and Advocacy Officer at Protection International. Protection International is a non-profit organization, and in her work, she supports human rights defenders in developing security and protection management strategies. She also supports human rights defenders across the globe through comprehensive protection programs using a preventive, collective, psychosocial, gender-sensitive, and intersectional approach. Henrietta will be joining us shortly. She's just got off a flight, but she'll be joining us later in this conversation. But by way of introduction, she is also Nigerian and a legal advisor at the Africa Reparations Program. She's a human rights lawyer and rule of law specialist, and her work has focused on women's rights, rule of law, and implementation of the African human rights decisions at the domestic level. She has worked with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Okay, so and moderating this conversation, of course, is the Executive Director of Global Rights, Ms. Abiodun Baiwo, who through her work has also worked to promote positive visibility of women across all sectors, ranging from peace building to security and human rights to equitable resource governance, and of course, gender and sexual and gender-based violence. So we are in for a very productive and insightful conversation with these seasoned speakers and moderator that we have leading the conversation. So I think at this point, I would hand over to our moderator, Ms. Abby, who will take the conversation from here. So if you can hear me, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Noya. And, you know, we really should introduce Noya in her full capacity and for the work, the amazing work that she's doing in Northwest Nigeria. Noya is our program officer on gender. She's also very fast acquiring skills on security, on gender-based violence, and she's been doing tremendous work with the women in Northwest Nigeria. And of course, is also expanding her tentacles across West Africa and really fast. She's also an author who has written on gender-based violence, especially gender-based violence on children with disability. And it's a go-to text, if you ask me, on responding to gender-based violence for people with disability. And I recommend that very much to you. So Naya herself is a powerhouse. And I had asked for her to moderate the session, but then she insisted she wanted to sit back a bit, especially after leading conversation earlier this week. We had also hosted the Northwest Regional Conference on Women, Peace and Security. So thank you very much, Noya, and welcome everyone. Permit me to stand on the introductions that Noya has made and to thank you all for attending this meeting today. I just spotted among the attendees one of our heroes in our work in Northeast Nigeria, Hajia Amsatu Alamin. Hajia, thank you so much for joining us today. I was so pleasantly surprised to see you among the attendees. If you would like to be added to the panel, I will be more than honored to have you added to the panel because I think your voice is still very essential, especially when we talk about peacekeeping in areas that have been taken over, that we're contending with terrorists across Africa, not just in Nigeria. So again, welcome everyone. I'm very excited to lead this conversation. Thank you, Noya, again for the introductions. And we'll just go really, really fast around the room for our panelists to talk about their work so far. This is not just to talk about peace and to talk about peace building and the role of women in peace building, but to celebrate these amazing women who have done tremendous work. And I would like to start by asking Barrister Rebecca Sakojon to please tell us a bit about the work that she's done, especially in central Nigeria and in the Northwest. Barrister Sakojon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Abiodun. It's a pleasure being your guest today. Coming from Abuja just a few days ago from the Northwest Conference. I want to say a big congratulations for women across the globe for celebrating the International Women's Day celebrations. Which to put my video, it's acting up okay. I think the way I'm staying is very bright. I'll soon put it up. But I want to congratulate women across the globe for celebrating the International Women's Day. As the years go by, people are becoming more used, or they're becoming more sensitized about the rights of women and trying to see where they can come in to improve the situation. For us in Kaduna, I've been working basically from Kaduna, but I do go around some of the states in the Northwest and then to the central Abuja. I've been doing a lot of human rights work over the years, a little bit of it now that I'm with the Kaduna State Peace Commission. I'm leading the conflict prevention, early warning, early response system unit, where we try to sensitize people to identify indicators for violence and conflicts and quickly report so that the stakeholders responsible will take action, will respond. And we work with a lot of stakeholders, not just the security agencies, but we work with civil society organizations, we work with governmental agencies, depending on the thematic area. It's quite interesting because we've tried to get citizens to take charge of their own security, peace and security. So if you see something and you don't report, it means that you are not interested in your own peace and security. And so we've tried to build the confidence of people to start taking action, to take their civic responsibilities more seriously ever than before, because while we are seeing less of communal conflicts, a different dimension in Farmer Harder crisis, we're beginning to see more of criminal activities, violent extremism, or even religious extremism, and then attacks. These attacks, you don't get any notice of, so they come in the dark of the night, or they just strike and go away, they kidnap people. And so the people are suffering, and that has gingered people who before were not interested in reporting or taking charge of their security. So now people are more interested in monitoring, and then also reporting any incidents that they see or suspect when they see things that are not in good order. So we've been doing a lot of that work, but we also have been doing a lot of work with women mediators. We're having an increased number of women mediators that have gone to their community, are beginning to sensitize other women, are beginning to take up cases in their community, issues of domestic violence or misunderstanding between family members, taking up public interest issues. The most common one is drug abuse, drug and substance abuse, and then working to see how they can reduce the influence of gangs in the community. So a lot of the women have been doing that, and so we are working with these women to increase their capacity or strengthen their capacity in mediation skills, and then giving back to their community, and also engaging the community leaders, especially the religious and traditional leaders, to provide more space for women and girls in terms of giving them appointive positions so that they can sit on the same table, but also working with the security agencies to ensure that they understand and acknowledge that women can play a role in peace and security. So when they are holding their meetings, to ensure that when they call any community meeting, that women are not left behind. So I'll stop at that on some of what we're doing to allow
Thank
others
you so much.
space.
Kaduna State, of course, has been very impressive and has been at the core of the implementation of Resolution 1325 in Nigeria, and the role that you play in the commission, and also seeing the way in which it's integrated into the entire society, and not just at the programmatic level of government. It has been very, very impressive. So thank you very much. Mercy, I'm going to invite you to talk about your work, and you have the floor.
Okay.
Okay. I want to take this opportunity to thank the organizers for this chance to interact with fellow human rights defenders and also women in peace, security, and development, and also allies in the field of peace and security. As Protection International Africa, as during Niall's introduction, she mentioned that we work with human rights defenders who advocate for the various human rights stipulated in the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. And part of the contribution that Protection International has been doing is building the capacity of human rights defenders to advocate for their rights in a peaceful way, as stipulated in the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, but also looking at what local mechanisms they can apply in terms of their collective protection, but also in terms of the work that they do. And then another thing is we have been very active in Nigeria, working with Partnership for Justice in Nigeria. And we have we've done a webinar that is last year in November, and the webinar focused on the contribution of women human rights defenders in peace building in Nigeria. And through that, we did a research where we published the stories of those women human rights defenders and how they've contributed into peaceful coexistence and also peaceful peace building in the various countries that they are in. We've also been working in Eastern Africa and also, West Africa to promote the right to defend human rights, but also looking at ways of which we empower the human rights defenders to look at positive narrative campaigns, because you find in most cases, youths have been used as tools for, let's say, creating or perpetuating violence. But then we are working towards empowering those youths to be agents of change and also peace ambassadors, rather than being tools of political, let's say, manipulation. And we have been very also working with artists to the use of art for human rights and also for peaceful existence, which helps to visualize the content and also helps those who might be not, let's say, might not interact with written texts. When they see the visual content, you find that they resonate with it, and we make it palatable in the language that we understand, that they understand. And in most cases, we've even tried to make it into Kiswahili, and we are making it accessible to all, if not, to many, if not all. And at an individual level, I've been working closely with the University of Nairobi in partnership with the African Leadership Center and also King's College London, under the Department of Peace, Security and Development. And through that, we've been able to do a lot of intergenerational learning, but also look at ways in which we interact with other members from Africa and also from beyond to learn from each other and also learn and interact, as well as applying the methods that they've applied and see whether it works in our context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very impressive, Mercy. I'm going to invite to also talk about our work. Protection International is doing amazing work in East Africa, and Mercy is at the core of that. Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for this privilege, and thank you for the opportunity of having been connected to this webinar. So I want to talk briefly on the work I've done, especially with GNWP. And we want to appreciate the fact that Nigeria, among other countries, have really topped in recognizing and establishing the National Action Plan. And we have been able to reach a lot of women to empower them, train them on women, peace and security, and also the young women. As a matter of fact, some years back, I launched the Young Women Platform and Network to empower the young women to become future leaders that can drive positive change here in Nigeria. And also in DRC and Rwanda, we have trained a lot of young women and also women on youth peace and security and women peace and security, as well as in Congo. So we have also took part in an interprovincial dialogue that brought together young women from different provinces of DRC to foster network building, leadership, advocacy, and economic empowerment. That is in DRC. And also we've also touched Chad. Just a few years back, we launched the National Action Plan in Chad. And that is the first National Action Plan they have. And it is still in progress. It is on monitoring and evaluation level at this stage. So we've been able to reach a lot of women to to be integrated, to have the knowledge of what the National Action Plan, that is what it's all about. When we talk about National Action Plan, a lot of them do not know about it. So we've been able to help women to come to understand it, and also help them to localize it, not just at the state or provincial level, but also at the local level. That is still in action at the moment. And in the past too, I have helped a lot of internally displaced persons to rehab. I have helped them be rehabilitated and reintegrated in their hometown. People that were displaced from Borno, that were in Abuja camp, we help them, reorientate them, and help them to be reintegrated into the society. So most of the work I do focus on women peace and security and youth peace and security.
Thank you so much, MM. A very impressive work. And of course, your footprint has been all over West and Central Africa. And it's very, very impressive, the amount of work that you get done each year. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome. Melissa, would you like to tell us about your work?
Yes. Hello. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Do you mind
Okay.
turning your
Yes,
camera
yes.
on?
I will. I will. I wanted to be sure that my audio is good. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Good day. My name is Melissa Drisi Simo. I am Cameroonian based in Ghana. So I work in Ghana, and my scope is all of West Africa. I work with the West Africa Civil Society Institute currently. I'm going to be talking about my intervention in peace building. I'll just narrow it to two and really tailor it to the work of rehabilitation and reintegration. So in 2022, I led a research in Cameroon, which was basically a baseline study on the implementation of the youth peace and security agenda in Cameroon. So basically, we wanted to know how far organizations are implementing this agenda in Cameroon, what is the state of affairs, how well are stakeholders engaged, and by default, because we were working on research on youth peace and security, we had to touch on the work of women in peace and security. So that document is actually available. I'm happy to share it. It's a timely resource if you're working in Cameroon, or if you're in a country that is implementing either the youth peace and security agenda or the agenda on women, peace and security. That is a timely agenda to understand how a country can implement that, and how stakeholders can basically to my work on rehabilitation of young violent offenders. So at the early start of my career, I began working directly in the space of peace and security, particularly in countering violence and violence extremism. And right now, more of what I do is I strengthen the capacity of civil society organizations, especially and including organizations peace and security. And one of the work in young violent offenders in prisons. So what that meant is that was a systems change initiative. And I say system change because the aim was to change the way rehabilitation was being done in Cameroon at a macro scale, to be able to impact policy as well and change the way policy is made around the rehabilitation of young people in Cameroon. So what that looked like was we were working in 8 prisons in 6 regions in Cameroon. And I say we because though I was at the lead of this project, I was working directly with Achaleke Christian and Local Youth Corner Cameroon. It was a team's effort that led to this massive change. So we engaged the young violent offenders in aspects as skills building in sports, in reconciliation. We trained them on different aspects of peace building, such a way that we were not just capacitating them in the sense of building your skills, but it was a robust process. And at the end of this, the person becomes a whole different transformed person. One thing that we did that was outstanding is we gave the process time. And when you give the process time, you are able to appreciate the results. And some of the results we saw happening is the transformation of the young violent offenders themselves. So we had some of them even being interviewed by BBC, and we have never been interviewed at the time by CNN and BBC. So why are these people being interviewed by, you know, but they got to the point where they were rehabilitated. They even came out of prison, and they even got international attention on how possible it is for rehabilitation to happen, working with the skills running in the prison. We also had access for other. You realize that between the time when these programs, young people to work in prisons, and that has been the outstanding part of our our work on rehabilitation and reintegration. I mean, if time permits, we could talk more about gender specific and how well they participated in it. But I think that's a summary of some of the work I've done in peace and security, rehabilitation, and integration. Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa. Again, very, very impressive. Yes, we will get a bit of time to talk about in more details about the work you're doing in the course of this webinar. I'm going to invite very quickly my very good friend Henrietta Efreke, sorry, to also tell us a bit about the work she's done. Henrietta has done amazing work all over Africa, not just in West Africa, in Southern Africa, in Central Africa. And she's been a strong voice for human rights in peace building. So, Henrietta.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, but we can't see you. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that you've been on the road today, so we're grateful to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. When I saw the invite, I knew that I wanted to be a part of the conversation and come learn from everyone who's been doing amazing work here. So thank you for having me. In terms of my work, so I currently work with Africa Judges and Jurists Forum. I'm a legal advisor on the Africa Reparations Program, and the reparations program I manage is focused on historical injustices. The African Union is in the process where it's trying to adopt a common position for reparations for historical injustice like colonialism, transatlantic enslavement, Africans, and apartheid. And so we at my organization have been instrumental in that process. In 2023, July, we organized an exchange visit between CARICOM, so the Caribbean community, and the African Union to have exchange of ideas, because CARICOM is, years ahead in terms of its agenda plan on reparations. But to answer your question specifically on, my work on women's rights so far, so I started with the African Commission, where I was supporting the Special Rapporteur on the rights of women in Africa. That was back in 2014, 2015, and was involved in women's rights work from that, and most recently, Waging Justice for Women Fellowship, which I did in Ghana for about a year. And in that project, I and a team of others, would go to rural communities to speak to women. It was more on legal empowerment for women, training them on access to justice tools, enabling them to understand the mechanisms within the domestic framework that was available to them to report issues of gender-based violence, discrimination, and other issues they faced within their communities, because we understand that legal empowerment is very instrumental in pushing for peace building in any community, and engaging people at the grassroots level is super important. So that I did for about a year in Ghana. I also worked at the Women's Rights Unit at the Center for Human Rights in South Africa, that has been involved in strategic litigation cases at the African Commission, the African Court, African Children's Committee. We filed a case against Nigeria, actually, for witchcraft persecution for children in Akwa Ibom State. I am from Akwa Ibom State, so that case was very personal to me. And it's still at the African Children's Committee, which is based in Lesotho. It's a human rights body by the African Union. So my work I've done a bit of work in women's rights in different forms and spaces. And I'll say they indirectly or in one way or the other touch on peace building, even though I've not exactly been, at the forefront of peace building per se. But I wanted to speak a bit about the AU Transitional Justice Policy, which is instrumental because it's a policy at the regional framework for transitional justice and speaks on having gender sensitivity in its processes. And there is the network that was formed about a year or so ago, African Women for Transitional Justice, which is a network that promotes practitioners in the different countries who are working on TJ processes to adopt gender-sensitive lenses in their work. And so by some of the work we do at my organization is capacity building for young women or young transitional justice practitioners, training for lawyers, judges, policymakers, so they adopt a gender-sensitive lens in reparations framework, advocating for women to be a part of reparations mechanisms, whether it's truth and reconciliation committees or, to be involved in the gender structure, because more than often we find that the structures are there, but the structures do not listen to women or do not have women in its, apex governance structures. So those are some of the advocacy that we are pushing for with the AU Trans Justice Policy and the Women for TJ. Some other work that I've done in this space, back in 2015, I was at the Kenyan National Human Rights Commission, and I was supporting the compliance division where we had public inquiry in the Baringo region where there was conflict. So our work then was documenting human rights violation, hearing from women and children in that, women, children, and others in the space on the issues they had, and then tabling it to the KNCHR to intervene, and also monitoring the Commission's human rights Commission's work in terms of getting the states to implement its international, human rights obligations. Yeah, I guess those are some highlights of the work I've done so far. I can share a bit more when we have more conversation. Thank you so much again.
Of course. Thank you so much, Henrietta. And of course, always impressed by the sheer breadth and depth of the work you've done in the past few years. Amazing. Well done. Musu is with us, and she's doing amazing work as well in Liberia. Musu, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi,
good
Musu.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Abiodun. Did I get the name right?
You did. It survived. Everyone calls me Abby, but my mother calls me Abiodun when I've done something wrong. Or something serious is going on. Please join her bandwagon.
Thank you, and good afternoon from hot Liberia. It's a bit sunny here, and I'm glad to be a part of this conversation where we are talking about work of women across, Africa with respect to peace and amplifying women's voices. So for me, my work started at the community level where I worked with communities, structures on preventing gender-based violence. As you all know, Liberia had suffered 14 years of civil war, and part of the burns from the war were high increase of sexual and gender-based violence. We had young people involved in drugs, and there are different couple challenges that we are facing as a nation as a result of the war. So my work started with working with communities, especially women and children at the community level, where I was able to coordinate setting up community structures. So we call them sexual and gender-based violence task force, where we had community leaders set up to prevent violence. And then in that, a key part of success for me was advocacy for a domestic violence law in Liberia. So till 2019, we did not have that instrument in Liberia. So that was passed in 2019 by the former president, George Weah. So for me, that was a success that we were able to have that instrument where women and girls were able to get redress when there was issues of violations. So transitioning to that from community to national level, I've also been able to co-organize or co-lead or Race Up by Women's Leadership program in Liberia. So that program focuses on getting women involved in leadership, because it's only when women at the table they're able to actually contribute to peace building efforts. So the Race Up by Women's Leadership have capacitated over 100 women leaders in Liberia. And presently, we have alumni from that program that are present lawmakers in the 54th House of Legislature. So at that level, what we're able to do is just to train them. It's just not to train them in women's women at the table, the importance of getting women into different structures that promotes the advancement of women. I've also been involved with coordinating capacity building for young women, especially at the Peace Hut level, because in Liberia, a part of strengthening our civic responsibility and agency to ensure that young people or mediation processes is to set up the town halls. So we call them peace huts in Liberia. So I've also been able to work with the peace huts to raise campaigns like We Are Unprotected campaigns, where we are able to talk about women's rights. So presently, I work across West and Central Africa, where at Plan International Regional Hub, I coordinate youth engagement in different processes. That's with peace process, that's with climate issues, all of what young people can be. And part of my work have been working with young people in the Central Sahel region, where I coordinate the Youth Challenge Fund. So the Youth Challenge Fund provide funding for young people in different parts of West and Central Africa, where they're able to contribute to their communities and try to advance community solutions. So a key part of my work is working with young people in Central Sahel region, where they are not just able to find innovative ways to contribute to rebuilding their communities, but they are also able to dialogue with religious leader or dialogue with leaders in a way that they are presenting different papers in different ways that can result to ending the conflict in Central Sahel. So that's just a brief of my work over time, and I'm glad to be here.
That's a brief of your work, but amazing work you continue to do, Musu. We're proud of you and the work you're doing. Well done. And I'm going to, not last but not least, invite Ajia Amsatu Alamin, who I absolutely love and with whom we've done amazing work in Northeast Nigeria, working on issues of terrorism. If I ask her to tell us about her work, we could actually spend the whole of this webinar here. But if you could please just tell us a bit about what they've been able to achieve in Northeast Africa. You can also talk about our joint work on fostering women fostering or resisting terrorism in Northeast Africa. Hajia, you have the floor. And it's good to see you again. Hajia Alamin, are you there? Hajia Amsatu Alamin.
Checking at the attendant. I think she's disconnected.
Oh, she's disconnected. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought she was still with us. Thank you so much, MM. So very quickly, we will get into deeper conversation, and it's first of all wonderful to see the depth, the breadth, and the length of the work you ladies have done. It is simply amazing, and how you touch the entire continent, especially the upper the part of the Horn of Africa, West Africa, and Central Africa, where the core of conflicts are, working in very challenging places like Liberia, Nigeria, the DRC, Cameroon. Those are really critical work that need to be done and are being done, working at the African Union level, and people not understanding how difficult work is at the AU level and still being able to hold it down as women, holding the space and holding them expertly. It's amazing. I'm pushed back into thinking about Resolution 1325 and when it started off in October 2020. Sorry, October 2000. October 2000 till date, October this year will make it 25 years of Resolution 1325, of the passing of Resolution 1325. And we've all come a long way. And in Africa as well, we've come some way. So far, about 30 countries in Africa have National Action Plan on Resolution 1325. Of those 30, not everyone is actively implementing 1325. Even in places where we have some form of implementation, it's still very challenging to get women's voices in the room and get a systemic working of Resolution 1325. Starting with Barrister Rebecca Sako-John, would you like to talk about how this is working out in your context in, for example, in Nigeria?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. First of all, I'd like to say that awareness around the resolution is quite low. It's been quite low. Okay, yeah. Wow. Okay, so the resolution is quite low, even at this moment, because we've worked both at the state level. Kaduna State just added the second action plan on 1325 in December. And we went around the states doing a review of the implementation of the first action plan, and then having series of engagements with different stakeholders, developing the second action plan. And you could see that a lot within government, outside of government, even the private sector, civil society, have very low knowledge about the resolution. And then that there's even in existence a state action plan. So that goes to show that the level of implementation was quite low also, because the coordination to get different stakeholders to drive the process of implementation was also very low. It's even worse for the National Action Plan, because when you come, I got involved at a later stage in the validation and other processes for the third, is it the third? The action plan that is about to be adopted by Nigeria. I think that's the third or fourth action plan. And so outside of those who were engaged during zonal engagements and at the national level also, you would see that we still have a long way to go. And I think that's why even the National Action Plan made provisions. There should be commitments for a robust enlightenment of the citizens, especially those who are saddled with responsibility of implementing various aspects of that action plan. And then also for the women, because it's meant to improve women's participation, to protect them from various acts of violence. And they introduce new emerging types of violations for women and girls, like social media, what is it called? The name has gone off now. Okay, using the social media, yes, violence against women using social media, like cyber Oh my God, my head has gone, the words have gone out. Yes, but cyber attacks on women and girls, and all sorts of things, even looking at how lack of access to land for women is also affecting their empowerment, economic empowerment, and so many other things. So yes, we do have policies that have been adopted at the national level and at the state level. And in Nigeria, we have over 16 states that have adopted action plans on the resolution 1325, and they're at various levels of implementing the provisions of those action plans. But like I would say, we need to go more than what we have done now. We need people to take ownership of those commitments that have been reached at the state and national level. We need to provide sufficient resources for the implementation mechanisms. And I'm happy that the new action plan has gone further to provide for the setting up of frameworks for monitoring and evaluation, implementation frameworks, had been able to identify those stakeholders that would participate jointly. In fact, it's emphasizing on collaboration and networking, so that we don't continue to work in silos. And also, it also emphasized on funding from national, regional, and international donors, so that where the state actors are able to fund sufficiently, the networks and the collaboration, the partnerships built with other funding agencies, other development partners would come in to supplement what we already have. And so even at that, we already have some bits and pieces of work that is being done by various stakeholders. But like I said, they are being done in silos, not in a coordinated manner. And so you would see that when it comes to looking at evaluating the level of implementation, it's very, very difficult. That some of these bits and pieces of work were done not as a deliberate action to implementing the NAP, but maybe because those actors have set out, they are focusing on that area, and then it aligns with some of the provisions of the NAP and the SAP. I think I would stop at that, except if you want me to mention some of the other types of work that have been done that aligns with the NAP and SAP across the states, and some of them in terms of looking at women's leadership, improving on economic empowerment, looking at issues of economic engagement around sociocultural practices that impedes women's leadership, that impedes against girl-child education, that impedes against healthcare and other thematic areas.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll just quickly go around the room and we'll come back to those issues. For those in this webinar who do not know what Resolution 1325 is, Resolution 1325 is the United Nations Security Council resolution on women, peace, and security. Like I mentioned, it was adopted in October 2000, and it was to acknowledge the disproportionate way in which conflicts affect women and girls, and to call for the adoption of gender perspectives, considering the special needs of women. And it was also to ensure the protection of women's rights, support women's participation in peace and negotiation in post-conflict resolution, and to protect women and girls from sexual violence during conflict. It was the very first resolution, and there have been a few after it, that mentioned organizing the framework around women, peace, and security agenda. It's been 25 years. And still, like Barrister Sako John said, very few people know about it. Henrietta, you're the international law expert. What are the barriers preventing for the full implementation? And you're also the expert on the African Union, and so you get these things at the national and at the regional level. What are the barriers to the implementation of 1325 or to peace building in general, women's participation in peace building and security on the continent?
Thank you so much for that question. So I think some of it came out earlier with some of the presentations that were made in terms of awareness. One, that people are not aware that these frameworks exist in the first place. Second, structural and systemic barriers such as patriarchy and the way women are perceived. Women do a lot of good work, whether it's with peace building, human rights development, and sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times, that work does not get recognized or appreciated or documented or are omitted in the documentation and, representation of work that has been achieved. So some of the barriers are, structural and systemic, and some of them come down to lack of awareness. But then another part is political will and implementation. So states would sign on to a lot of international treaties, documents. At the African level, we have so many. We have a plethora, from the African Charter on Human and People's Rights to the Maputo Protocol, that is the protocol on the African Charter on the Rights of Women in Africa, which we're still advocating and pushing for more states to ratify. And then there are several other policies, but there is that gap between signing it because states want to look good and having them being implemented. And so to respond to the barrier question, the second part of it would be on strategy, which is on the need for more advocacy, the need for trainings, within the legal profession, within community mobilization for people to be aware of the frameworks, because it's stronger when you're doing advocacy and you're tying it to existing frameworks. It's not like it's something made up from the air and we're just trying to campaign from nowhere, but basing it on existing framework makes a difference. It gives legitimacy, at least, speaking legally, to the claim that is being made. So yeah, that would be some of the barriers and strategies. I'll say training, advocacy, and also, I guess, translating some of these norms to language that people on the ground can understand. Because we as lawyers speak a lot of legalese, and a lot of maxims and quoting section, this article, this, quoting all the numbers, resolution 66, this of the commissions, what's of the UN, there are so many bodies that have so many resolutions and so many output reports that come out of them. And one of the strategies, I think, from the work I did years back in the Gambia with paralegal clinics, when we go to talk to community chiefs, is to break down what we're trying to communicate to them as chiefs, to say, women in your community have rights. Women in your community should be a part of this council that here matters in the community, which sounded very, wild to them because this is not how they operate in their domestic local system, but we're trying to advocate for something that exists in norms, right? And so breaking that down, whether to Mandinka, to Wolof, in a language that people actually understand, goes a long way. Those would be some of my contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henrietta. A brilliant contribution. Melissa, considering your work with WAXI, how do you think we can push the gains of 1325? We can push more women's involvement sitting at the table, at the decision-making table for Africa, for West Africa.
Thank you. So I think thank you for the previous submission. I think that was really set the pace for the answer to this question. I'll start with just talking about the political will, aka the civic space. So within some countries, the civic space is still very much repressed. And so even though they have national action plans, even though they have the will to go ahead and do the work, there is still a lot of there are still a lot of dictates on how the work should be done. Women's work on peace building should be done. And so within the region, generally, there should be some advocacy for the civic space to be less repressed. So we should be conscious about advocating for freedoms in the civic space, so that when action plans like these come into place, the civil society is able to advocate in the ways that they want to advocate, not in ways that are dictated by political dictates or governmental dictates. I think that's one way. And of course, I want to touch on capacity building. There is definitely need for increased capacity within the space. And this is why part of the research I did, one of the findings were that there is a wide knowledge, especially there's wide knowledge around the different tools that we have, but not proper understanding of what that means, even by the actors themselves. So it's more like a tagline. It's more like sounding like I'm in the system. I understand the system, so I can quote all these things. But there's not enough understanding of what this means and the different categorizations that happen within this. And so when in engaging policy, in engaging the space, when we realize that you don't have depth, it becomes difficult to push for the agenda that we are pushing for. So there is need for capacity building among the actors on youth, on women, peace and security. I think I'll touch on those 2 points.
Yeah, you've made absolute sense. Thank you so much, Melissa. Musu, one of the things that bothers me about women having a seat at the table in peace building, in dealing with insecurity, is that if you must have a seat, you must have some power to back up your seat. Otherwise, you'll be inactive in that seat. And there's the tendency to include women as a token on the seat. One of the ways in which, of course, women should advance would be through education and through economic empowerment. Considering the long journey Liberia has taken and considering your work, how strong and how ready are women to take their seat in peace building in Africa?
Thank you. So the rollbacks on rights that we've seen recently have affected, the progress that women have made in all areas of rights, to include women's participation in peace, in peace and conflict resolution. So for Liberia, there have been progress made, but we are still struggling with, affirmative actions, because I think that's one thing. Sierra Leone have been able to pass theirs, and we can see other countries across Africa that have been able to pass affirmative actions. But for us, we are still struggling with passing affirmative action. So with women having a seat at the table, I think that conversation should not be something that we should be discussing, because in Liberia, we've seen a lot of women taking the table. For example, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was the first female president in Africa. So I think she's been able to raise the bar, and we've seen in other African countries, women are asserting themselves to take seat at the table. So I think what needs to be done is to support women to, be more assertive, and then also bridge the intergenerational gap, because we have, women who have all of the experiences in driving leadership, peace, and all of that. And then there are young women like myself who are taking up those spaces. So I think we need to be talking now about sustainability. How do we sustain this movement, even though there are a lot of challenges that we are aware of? And there's a need for capacity building. There's a need to provide women with more spaces, to contribute to peace building. But there's also a key important thing is to bridge this intergenerational gap. Because, for example, if we have women like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and other women across Africa like Lima Bowie, if they leave the space, who takes on that beacon to leadership in Africa? Women are at the table, even though sometimes we are seen as a homogeneous group, which is not the case, because peace might be different thing to a rural woman. Peace might be different thing to someone who is an executive, but sometimes we are seen as a homogeneous group. But what needs to be done is to bridge the intergenerational gap that's existing, build women capacity to contribute to peace in their areas, like the women peace hut that's happening in Liberia. So those are all different instruments that we can use, to raise women voices in ensuring that peace and security is paramount to the well-being of women in Africa and around the world.
Thank you so much. Musu, we keep talking about Ellen Johnson Sirleaf as though this is the example of a typical African woman. It is not. She's got a lot of political clout. She comes from a very strong family, and she has the money to back that up, which most African women don't. But you also touched on a very important point, which is that there must be an intergenerational movement to ensure the voices of younger women as well. And that I very much would like to hear about. And so I'm going to invite Mercy and to talk about how do we ensure the voices of younger women are heard. 25 years ago, most of us, well, I speak for myself because at the cusp of that, I remember 25 years ago being very fascinated with the T25, but feeling it will never take off. But then it has also dictated a lot of the work that I have subsequently done. And there must be a handover to a younger generation. Mercy, what do you think? How do we get there? You're next after Mercy.
Thank you for the rich discussion that is happening. And in my own opinion, I think there are many ways that exist that we can include intergenerational learning and also amplifying the voices of women. But then I will look at one is establishing platforms whereby young women can participate. And these can be in terms of intergenerational learning platforms whereby they outgoing, let's say, not outgoing, based on age, let me use the age, based on age, whereby the elder in the group trains the young one, and the young one can also train the elder on the new technologies or the new ways that exist to ensure sustainable transition in the society. The other one can be through capacity building. When you build the capacity of these young women and girls, you find that they are able to take up the space. And you find when you provide them a platform to share their ideas, it could be an idea that someone was sitting on, but then when you give them the platform, they're able to share ideas, which in one way or the other contributes towards either peace building or a peaceful coexistence. And the other way is appreciating the different efforts that each and every person brings to the table, because you find we have different capacities. I might have the capacity to train, but then the other person has the capacity to come up with campaign messages. How do we leverage on the existing capacities that we have within the women's space to ensure that we coexist and also build each other to build a society whereby the voices of women and girls are heard, and also where women can meaningfully engage in decision-making spaces, so that they are not used as rubber stamps or used as ways of filling the room just to show that there's gender equality or gender equity in the room. How do they meaningfully engage in the discussion? And now the capacity building comes in there, whereby we empower the women or mentor the young women on how to engage in different spaces, so that they do not come in or they are not dismissed based on how they share their ideas. The other way can be through legal and institutional mechanisms, where we look at how to integrate gender perspectives. And this can start from the lower level, that is homes. You can start from your home as you move upwards to see how well can you incorporate the women and girls' voice in terms of peace building, but also participation in the different spaces. And lastly, I will talk about awareness campaigns and advocacy, whereby you challenge the negative narratives that exist or the gender stereotypes that exist in order to provide this woman with the capacity to be able to stand in a space and feel welcomed and also heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I'm sorry, yes, you know, we've been talking a bit about ensuring an intergenerational spectrum of women sitting at the table. Are the older women pulling up the younger women to the table? What roles should the younger women play? Do the younger women also have to pull themselves up? What's your perspective? Do they have the capacity? What platforms do they have to engage in peace? I mean, you're doing amazing work even by yourself, but what's out there for younger women and the future of peace building and security in Africa?
Well, I have about 3 strategies that I envisage. That is amplification strategy. When I talk about amplification strategy, mentorship program should not be forgotten. There's a need for older women to mentor the younger women. As I earlier mentioned, I created a platform for young women leaders here in Nigeria, for Rwanda, and for RDC. Sorry, I mix up words because I speak French and I've worked in French territory lately. So most of the time I wanted to say RDC. So DRC, Congo DRC. So this platform help, in this platform, the older women were invited to share their experience and they're added into the platform. And each of the older women are assigned mentees. They become mentors to these younger women. I particularly am a mentor to more younger women in this platform. So this will help the younger women to learn from the older women. This can bridge the gap of intergenerational gap that we have. So mentorship program is quite vital for this amplification strategy, and also leadership training. This cannot be overemphasized. Leadership training will offer the younger women the capacity building program that will help them, equip them in the leadership skill they need in order to be able to take over this role when the older women leave the seat. So this program is quite vital to be able to help them grow into this seat. And platform creation is what I also mentioned. This is quite important. We need to have platform for this. And as a matter of fact, African Union to also have platform for African youths, which help us have exchange of our activities and also share opportunities. And it's also a learning platform as well. And the African Union also have women mediators, young youth mediators as well, known as Wise Youth and FemWise. I'm part of the FemWise, that is Women Mediators in Africa. Then we also have to take a look at inclusive decision making to ensure that younger women are presented in decision making. And in all the peace building process, they are also part of the seat. Then the second point I mentioned is empowering strategies. In these empowering strategies, education and awareness are quite important to provide access to information and the education that they need to have to be able to amplify the voices of the young women. Economic empowerment should not be overlooked because I drafted a program for training young women in Chad. Everything was in place. I coordinated the women and everything, getting to the point of they were selected, all were chosen and everything. We're expecting money from African Union headquarters. But unfortunately, the money did not come. So everything just went under the carpet. So economic, and we cannot do this without funding. So funding is quite important. Economic empowerment to support the initiative. Yes, the initiative is there. If you ask a lot of young women, they have ideas, but they don't have the fund. So this is quite important. And if this is done, it will even help them to be independent. It will help them to be independent and self-sufficient among younger women. Then we also have networking opportunities. This will create a platform for young women and older women to connect together, to learn from each other. So networking opportunities, good enough, we have a lot of social media platform that can incorporate this networking opportunity. We can have a WhatsApp group, Telegram, and whatever. These two can be very vital. And most importantly, we should not forget confidence building. I have trained a lot of young women, and most of them come to me that, oh, I had an idea of this thing, but I didn't have the confidence to speak out. So this too is quite important. We need to encourage and support young women in building their confidence and self-esteem. These two can help them to be able to speak out to others. And as knowledge are being passed around, the knowledge become a kind of it's all over. People will come to, have more knowledge on it, because if I have the knowledge, I keep it to myself because I don't have the confidence to speak out, and the other person same, the knowledge is being limited. Other people will not have the knowledge to even apply it. Then having role models too, as I earlier said, mentors and mentees is quite important when it comes to empowerment strategy. The last strategy I came up with is advocacy strategy. Policy influence. Of course, I don't want to talk much about this, but we need to advocate for policies that support empowerment and inclusion of young women. And social media campaigns. We know that this is very practical, especially in Nigeria. Recently, I read an article that has to do with the recent African Union chairperson election. The person that a lot of people anticipated that he will win the election did not win. The question is why. The article explains it. Because the Kenyans said we voted him down. What did they use? Just in their room, social media. And we also seen the cases of social media in Nigeria when we talk about the NSAS program and all that. So this is very important. Social media campaign can be used in peace building processes as well. Then community engagement. Nigerian has the National Action Plan, about 16 states has it. And few local governments have it. I remember I drafted the national lab for Borno and one other state. Now, the question is, how many states, out of 36 states, just 16 has National Action Plan. Few states have local action plan. So that's to say there's a lot of gap, even in our country, a lot of gap. So we need to have this community engagement so as to amplify younger women's voices. We need to look around our neighbor. It's not the question of having meeting in Abuja, no. We should also have it in the state level. We should also have it in the local government level. We should even have it in, villages level, where we can use the language that they understand. This too is very important. Partnership and collaboration. That I can say that we are trying in this aspect, because Nigerian, we partner with a lot of organizations. We collaborate with different networks just to amplify the voices of young women. This should continue to be put in place. And lastly, I want to talk about research and data collection. We carried out a research on women mediators in Nigeria. The number of women we realize is actually more than what we think or the paper carries. So if we carry out this research and data collection, it will help to better understand the challenges, the opportunity that younger women face.
we'll get to hear from them, and we'll also be able to track in a way, we'll also be able to track the problems and also see possible solutions to these problems and even the challenges they may be facing. So this too is quite important when it comes to amplifying the voices of young women.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, MM. I know she wasn't prepared for this, but I'm going to ask Noya to talk a bit about her experience working at the grassroots level, working with women, intergenerational, working with women of different identities. But Noya, specifically, I'd like you to talk about about how important it is to involve what we call the invisible women, internally displaced women, women living with disability, young women, and the aged women, the very old women, are often the women that are left out of the conversation. So Naya, while you gather your thoughts, I'm going to ask for everyone else in the meeting, if you have a question or you have comments, please put them in the chat or raise your hand and we will get to you. But Noya, sorry, I pulled a fast one on you, but please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Abby. I'm permitted to turn off my camera. My network is not very strong, so I'll
No worries.
my camera off. Okay, so I like that you use the phrase invisible women because I think it really emphasizes the level of how they face multiple layers of exclusion in this space. So because generally, as we know, women are already marginalized. Women are already marginalized in almost every facet of life when it comes to education, when it comes to health, when it comes to even like what you consider the general aspects of life, not talk of something as niche in quotes as peace building. And then when you now start to think of women who are, women with disabilities or young women, that is another layer of exclusion that they have to contend with because people with disabilities already face their own level of exclusion and marginalization. Same with young people, because people might not know this, but young people are seen a certain way, they're perceived a certain way, and usually are seen as maybe drivers of like conflict and chaos at the community level. And as a result, they're hardly included in these processes. So it's going into these communities and engaging these people is having that understanding and working with this understanding that they're already contending with those layers of exclusion. And then when you have to then compound that with certain issues like poverty and lack of education or access, then it becomes even more challenging. And then you really have your work cut out for you at that point. But I think something that has worked for us in the work that we have done here at Global Rights, engaging that community, has been working with some of the key stakeholders at that grassroots level. So I think it was Barrister Rebecca at the beginning who mentioned the importance of, community leadership and, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and even just elderly people, especially men at the community level. At the end of the day, I mean, a lot of things have been said today, but what is really important to note is that when you're dealing with grassroots community, you cannot mobilize that inclusion that you're talking about women without including the men. It is very important. A lot of times for me, who has worked specifically in the northern part of Nigeria, I think it's the same in Africa. When you think of the north, it's a lot more conservative. It's a very conservative region. It's highly patriarchal, and there are lots of gender stereotypes and biases that you have to break. So penetrating that scenery is a challenge in itself, and you can't do it without working in collaboration in tandem with the male figures. And then when you start thinking of the men, you also have to think of, say, the custodians of power. At the community level, these are community members who look up to certain ideologies and look up to certain principles that they live by, which are heavily founded on religion and tradition and culture. And the custodians of those are the people that we have worked with and engaged. So I think in terms of like strengthening that community, especially at the grassroots level, it really goes down to working with the leaders and the custodians of power, which would be traditional and religious leaders, having them understand while we talk about women inclusion and pushing the agenda for women to be more positively visible, I think we need to work with men and help them understand how important it is to them as well. So it's not just a a race of one gender. It's not just a race of women. It's a collaboration. So once men start to see it more as a collaboration, they start to understand, and then you can get their buy-in in that way. So we're not here to, dismantle certain things that you hold dear, or certain cardinal principles that you have. We just want to work side by side. So I think working with those groups of people and working with those key stakeholders has been instrumental in driving that change. In terms of, issues like I mentioned about education and poverty, those are also very key factors and sometimes mitigants to your success. But I think having that approach is one foot in the door. Working with those communities can help break, certain stereotypes and drive positive change. And the thing is, once you're able to mobilize a certain group of people, a certain class of women, it becomes easier to penetrate the entire community. So I think that is something that has really helped. I think as much as we want to amplify the voices of women, when we're dealing with the grassroots, we also have to remember how important men are in driving that change and working in collaboration with them. And I think part of the work that we have been doing is trying to coordinate those grassroots efforts on a more statewide and regional scale, trying to, in the communities that we've established at the community level, we're trying to coordinate better response systems for them and those at the states and at the federal level. That is a way of amplifying those voices at that level. By the time you've created a strong community of people that you're working with, it's easier to, connect them or strengthen collaboration between them and more formal structures to sort of institutionalize that system and give them a bigger voice and a bigger platform to engage. I hope that captures the response. I wasn't able to put my thoughts together, but I hope that
well, I mean, I sprung it on you, so well, thank you, and thank you for also sharing eloquently on the need to ensure the inclusion of men in the conversation, and also about the invisible groups and ensuring their participation. We'll probably share another full conversation about invisible groups and the role that they play in peace building in another webinar or a meeting or fireside chat. Mohammed, as my father has had his hand up for a while, so I'm going to allow him to speak. Mohammed, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mohammed, my father, and I'm the program manager of RAPAC State, Katsina State, in Nigeria. I was on the background listening all the conversation, and I think we have discussed passionately about the issues of inclusion of women and young generation. But I have two comments to make, and it has to do one with the issue of the resolution 1325, which has to do, to my understanding, first it has to do with our own democracy, the level of our democracy. If you think the growth, I think is good, human rights growth hand in hand with the democracy. If we have in 2025 what the slogans, what discussions that shape the American election conversation, one of which is reproductive right to reproductive health, which those kind of discussions can only happen when you have a strengthened democracy, which we don't have here. When the society, when our level of democracy, when our level of development are on the first foundation of terms of infrastructure, you find it difficult to talk less of other issues that has to do with human rights. So I think that is some of the barriers that we are having here. Those are the challenges. As long as it has to do with the development of our democracy. And secondly, and unfortunately, they said in every crisis situation, it has also come with some opportunities. And I think that's the opportunity we have used and what we have done in the project Women, Peace and Security in the Northwest, especially with the CDC model. I think that is a very good opportunity of bringing, promoting inclusion from the local level for women and girls, to be part of decision making in terms of this. Women and girls are the most affected whenever there is any crisis, especially war, banditry, and that. So they appreciate that role when the opportunity comes for them. at that local level to be part of decision making. And fortunately, with the crisis happening especially in the northwest of Nigeria, and now the community leaders, faith and all gatekeepers have seen the need for inclusion of women and girls in decision making at that local level. So I think, as Noya said, that is that we can use that platform. You can use those community level or the CDC at this community to engage more with these women, to empower these women, and also you can also use those platforms also to encourage that intergenerational change, where we have young women, we have young girls, we have elderly women who, by virtue of this dialogue committee, have the opportunity to sit one-on-one to discuss issues of their community, especially when in terms of peace, and also to discuss issues with their community leaders, faith and cultural leaders. I keep saying it, I've said it in the conference. One of the thick successes of our CDC in Katsina is that I have never thought that within this short period of time, these women, because of the training they have undergone with the, under the global right, the girls training, under the GVV committee, they were bold enough to go head to head to a commandant of a military barracks to tell him that his soldiers are doing to their community citizens is going to, they will not condone that, and they will continue to resist that kind of intimidation from the military post. So if women and girls at that community level will be bold enough to talk to military, to a barrack commandant, you think that that kind of platform should be able to encourage, sustain, and also, expand to cover other frontiers. And we can continue to build this capacity from that local level, notwithstanding what our political leaders will do with the resolution 1325 in terms of implementation plan. But when the women at the grassroots level, at the local level are empowered, they know that yes, they have the right to talk to institutions, they have the right to talk to political, to faith and cultural leaders, to demand accountability from them. I think that is a very strategic way to confront these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Very, very important thoughts. The bigger question also is the quality of our democracy. Is there any power at the grassroots, not just for women, but also for men, enough to engage in peace building? Very quickly, I'm going to invite Henrietta to give her last thoughts. She needs to leave the meeting urgently. We're very grateful for your participation. And so just your last thoughts as we round up. Khadija, I still see your hand up. We're coming your way.
Thank you so much for understanding, and apologies for having to leave. I'd been traveling for about 18 hours, so I'm really trying to keep my eyes open. And thank you for all the speakers and all the great points that have been made. Just to tie in some of the things that Noya said about including the men, I think I'd referenced in some of the work I did back in Gambia with engaging the chiefs in a local language, because at the end of the day, in order to get access to certain spaces, you need to be able to talk to the gatekeepers. And sometimes they're women, a lot of times they're men. And then in terms of capacity building, that has been highlighted, that it's very important for us to build capacity for the younger women in the space, to engage more and build systems for intergenerational gap. All of that has been mentioned. But there's something that I think came out when MM was speaking about funding and how that is a challenge for women in the space. And so perhaps to just call on us to do a bit more advocacy on gender budgeting, because that goes a long way. So even as states are having the National Action Plan, pushing the element of gender budgeting. So we're not waiting for international funders and donors and international organizations to support. We can raise these funds from our governments if we push them from the onset to create streams of funding that goes towards women-led projects, women in peace building, women's rights, etc. And I heard when Mohammed spoke about democracy, I think it goes beyond. Democracy is one part of the point, but I think it goes beyond that to changing people's mindsets, dismantling that systemic barrier we spoke about in terms of the gender biases. And so if we do not have more conversations that allow people to think beyond what they already know, and some of the limiting ideas they have about women in leadership, then we will not go very far. So it would be great for us to invest in more advocacy that reaches more people to understand the role women play. Not just women aren't just victims, women are leaders, and women have done so much work in this space and can do even more work with the right resources and amplification. Thank you so much. I look forward to the output of the meeting. If it's I don't know what points, maybe it'll come up on the website to check out.
Policy brief, yeah.
The policy brief, yes, I'd really look forward to reading that. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much, Henrietta. It was really lovely to see you again. I haven't seen you in years, and to hear your voice and to hear your thoughts. Very, very valid all the way. I'm going to invite the panelists to give their closing remarks, a minute each. But before then, Khadija Gambo has
Okay, do I start?
I'm sorry, Khadija has had her hand up for a while, so I'm just going to allow her to ask her question or make her comments before we come back to you, ma'am.
All right. Good evening, all of you there. And it's quite interesting and listen to the conversation, if I may say, around the room. But permit me to just quickly share some of my thoughts concerning women mediators, and as well as also the bridging the intergenerational gap that exists, between women. So one of it is that having been working at the grassroots, I think one thing that I have noticed is missing is the practical skills of peace building. Yes, it is good to train, and it is good to build capacity, but I think so far we've not really succeeded in exposing the women to peace building in the field. So I think we need to do more of that too, because I've noticed that gap. And then the second thing, the intergenerational gap that we have. Unfortunately, it seems like we are reluctant to bring in the younger ones to join us in understanding the issues and the challenges, and then as well as also, like I think it's that said, this issue of confidence building. So we have to be deliberate about it, we have to be honest about it, and we have to work towards ensuring that we don't just talk about it, but that it is happening. Because some of us in a few years to come will have to, move from the field, and then other ones have to come. Now, the last one which also I wanted to discuss, or rather share with us, is can we begin to think about how can we be deliberate and involve the human rights, especially when it concerns the abuse of women's rights. I do not see it very much happening in Nigeria, where, when a woman is abused, we all come together in solidarity with one voice and speak up for that woman. So I think we need to be very, very practical about all of these things, rather than just talking English, but we must come up and find a way of networking to stand up for any woman that we think is violated. And that will help a lot in the kind of work we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very valid thoughts. So very quickly, we will begin to round up. Barrister Sako John, your final thoughts, ma'am.
Thank you, Abi. That was my acting chairman, Khadija Hawaja from the Kaduna State Peace Commission here. It's good she was able to. I just shared the link at the last moment, and I'm happy she was able to join us. I'm not sure whether she's in Nigeria or where. Anyway, I just want to say that inclusion of women and girls in the peace building process is very, very important because it brings about a holistic approach to addressing the challenges in conflict, in violence. And that is why the UNSCR Resolution 1325 is a very big and transformative approach to reducing inequalities, promoting social justice, and ensuring that everybody is carried along, leave no one behind. And so this discussion has been very, very interesting. You must say, I learned a lot from the discussion because I was able to meet, I think it's also about the intergenerational interaction. A lot of the young people on this panel are working at different levels, more than what I've done. So even one of the recommendations I wanted to make for amplifying girls' voices is also to get them exposed to lessons, to practices from within even the country, with the states they belong to, across the globe, either regionally or internationally, to hear the good stories about the various effects, the impact of the work that other women and girls are doing. And also to say that we cannot re-emphasize the need for capacity building, especially for young girls, in terms of life skills, how to engage the community. Community engagement should be more constructive and strategic, public speaking, confidence building, and also finally to say that we need to harness and encourage them to use various methods of amplifying their voices. Some can use spoken language, spoken voice, some can use drama, some can use arts, music, any other forms of amplifying their voices, especially as we have people, some are people with disabilities. We have diverse women that need to bring out their voices to have a say and to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barrister Sako John. Indeed, that the amplification and the inclusion of all cadres, of ensuring mentorship, of ensuring grassroots voices are critical. Mercy, 1 minute.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this interesting discussion. My parting shot would be a call for action for all women to at least mentor 2 or 3 people in your circle to bring them up from the lower level, but also look at how do we involve university students and how do we involve youths who are now using digital platforms to advocate for rights and also create inclusive environmental, inclusive platform for people to participate and women from all diversities to participate. And how can we support those initiatives to ensure that the voices of women and girls are heard in all the spaces that they should be heard? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercy. MM, 1 minute, your closing thoughts.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you everyone for your beautiful contribution in which I got to learn a lot. Well, my recommendation is that we should walk the talking, because we have made a lot of points here, and we have also had a lot of interchange of knowledges and everything. So we should now walk the talking. We should apply all these things we have discussed today, starting from, let it start from me, let it start from you, and amplify the voices of young women.
Let's walk the talk, and it starts with us as individuals. Let it start from you, let it start from me. Thank you so much, MM. Melissa?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity as well. I've learned a lot from colleagues.
Oh dear. Melissa's internet is
I'll
dodgy.
just give
Okay.
three quick points in my 1 minute. One of them,
Are you there,
please, can
Melissa?
you hear me?
Yes, we
Please,
can
can you hear
hear
me?
you now. We can. I think you should keep
Yes,
your
I am. Can
camera
you hear
off
me?
so we can hear you. Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, nice. So, thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been such a learning experience for me and a pleasure to share. My key points or takeaway points is one, we should be impact focused and not activity focused. The problems Africa has doesn't need people who are activity focused, but it needs people who want to drive impact and change the course of things. Number two, active collaboration between all partners. We should the work we have to do in women and peace building needs active collaboration between all partners. And the third one is around funding. We cannot build the peace, we can't say our activity or our actions in peace building are dependent on funding that is given to us. So what I mean by this is we need to find alternative ways of getting resources, funding our dreams and our ambitions, because Africa's peace cannot be dependent on donor funding. We need to be more innovative in our ways of getting funding for our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We do need to be very innovative in the way in which we execute our work, in the way in which we gain funding for our work. And finally, Musu, your final thoughts.
Thank you to Global Rights and you, Abil, for having me here today. It was an interesting conversation to learn of the work you're doing, and also from women across the continent on how they're leading change and peace efforts within their professional work and also personal work. So I would just want to say that at the moment there's a struggle, with accelerating all the work we've done when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to peace and security. There are so many barriers that exist. There are so many challenges to push us backwards as women, but we can not sit and allow that happen. We need to be more assertive. We need to find innovative, ways to tie our lappers around each other, because it's the time that, it's for us with us. So it has to be collective action, collectively putting our resources together. And, it's not a time, for us to see who leads what. It's a time that we come together as a generation, that we come together as people working with the men. And we come together to drive the peace of Africa, because there are challenges like right now in the Central Sahel. What we see, those countries have left ECOWAS. Can we allow, Africa to go back to those ages? We say no. So peace starts with us. It's a collaborative work. And I must say that together we can sustain the peace of Africa, and together women can lead at every level. There's no work that is not important. The little that you do within your communities can lead bigger results. So let's not give up. Let's push the fight, and let's coordinate as much as we can to sustain the peace in Africa, and also ensure that we gather our own resources to fight this fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musu. I'm going to give a final soundbite to Ajia Gambo. It's an honor to have you on the call. So in 1 minute, your thoughts about the thoughts that have been expressed in this room today.
Yeah, I think as a wrap up to the discussion is that the beauty of the discussion today is the consensus built around that. Yes, we've done so much looking back, and but we need to do a lot also. So we are appreciating how far we've come, as well as also appreciating the challenges that are before us. One of the striking things I heard today is this issue of not depending on outside donors, especially looking at what happened in the US elections now. That has affected a lot of work, and it's going to affect in future a lot of what we do. So I think it's a lesson that unfortunately we have to learn, not to be too dependent on foreign donations, but also look inward and see how we can push through our own local and what I mean, our own national government to ensure that they also invest in peace building. I think another second thing that I wish to also share with all of us is that I do not know whether we've noticed that the leadership, our leadership, is yet to come to terms with the fact that the non-kinetic approach is more efficacious than and cheaper than the kinetic approach to resolving conflict. And so a lot of governments are reluctant to invest in that. So that will require a lot of advocacy, a lot of lobbying around not only the executive, but also to the legislative to ensure that they become conversant with the fact that prevention of conflict is cheaper and better for us than allowing conflict to escalate. And lastly, what I wish to say is that I appreciate the richness of the discussion in the room today. And I can see a lot of beautiful things happening, not only in Nigeria, but in other nations of Africa. And so I wish to congratulate us for the little that we have done in contributing to the peace that we have now. And I also wish to encourage us to continue to do more. I believe with passion, we will be able to go far from where we are. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to not only listen, but to also share with you. So it's nice meeting you, and I look forward to more interactions with all of you.
Very much looking forward to more interactions with you as well, ma'am. I see we're out of time. We're actually way out of time, but I see in the room also my big sister, Bridget Osakwe, and I wonder if she wants in just 1 minute to also share thoughts. I see she's shared something in the chat. If you would, I've just sent you a request to unmute. But also we have Ekeme Okong says, while Bridget Osakwe is getting ready to speak, please can we share some practical building on peace building that women should be exposed to? We will address that afterwards. You have the floor, sis.
Thank you so much for the rich conversations that have taken place in this place. And I am happy with the crop of young women that we have here and that have spoken. It gives me hope. Each time I see young women talk with confidence about women, peace, and security, it ensures sustainability. And I just put on the chat box that it is important that in as much as it is important for older generation to transfer to younger generation, the younger generation should acknowledge the work that is being done by the older generation. That way it becomes symbiotic and sustainable. Thank you for bringing us together for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really grateful. Like I said, we're way out of time. I know Melissa is spilling into another meeting, and I'm grateful that you've taken the time. I just want to say thank you to all panelists, all attendees. You've all been amazing. This was a rich conversation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so. I'm just going to hand over to Noya Sedi to round up for us. But then a final note from me. Do not be held back by imposter syndrome. Your place is at the table. Noya, I sign out.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for those words. And thank you to our speakers, Melissa, Musu, Henrietta, Barrister Rebecca,
Mercy, thank you so much for joining this conversation. Hadia Khadija, Ms. Bridget, everybody who contributed questions and everything. We are very grateful. This was an important conversation that I thought we needed to have and on an intergenerational level and also across on the regional level as well. And I'm just happy with some of the outcomes of the conversation so far. And there's definitely a lot to learn and definitely a lot of work to be done. So hopefully this is not just a conversation that would end here. This will translate into more actionable and practical steps that we can all carry on in our respective communities, the work that we do, and collaboratively as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here. And to keep up more with our work that we're doing, please follow us on Global Rights NG on Instagram, on Twitter, and Global Rights on Facebook, just be part of our ongoing work, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent as well. And thank you. So I think that will be the end of this conversation. And hopefully we get to collaborate more and talk more about these issues. Thank you so much.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.